Gospel Reflections for Palm and Passion Sunday, Year C, 13th of April 2025. The two Gospel readings are, first one, Luke 19, verses 28 to 40. Second one, Passion reading from Luke chapter 22, verse 14 to chapter 23, verse 56. The main focus of these two Gospel readings is this: we who acclaim Jesus with the palm branches today are invited to imitate his healing, comforting, forgiving, and compassionate ministry towards sinners, women, Gentiles, enemies, and outcasts, even in the midst of his passion. So the main theme in brief is this: compassion of Jesus even in the midst of his passion. The church celebrates today a two-in-one liturgy, calling it both Palm Sunday and Passion Sunday. The two gospel readings proclaimed in today's liturgy represent two contradictory aspects of our lives: joys and triumphs, sorrows and pain. We have our own Palm Sundays of triumph and victory, as Jesus had his during his entry into Jerusalem, and our own Passion Sundays of mental and physical suffering, as he had his own during his passion. During triumphant procession, people shout, "Hosanna is the King who comes in the name of the Lord," as Luke mentions in chapter 19, verse 38. But during his passion, the same people shout, crucify him, as verse 21 says. Is this also not true to us? Do we sing Hosanna to Jesus in prayer and worship, and in real life crucify him by murdering his gospel values such as truth and justice, love and peace? Just as people pray to Jesus for his deeds of power, as Luke mentions in chapter 19, verse 37, that is, for his miracles, there are times when people acclaim, support, and praise us for our good works, success, and achievement. On the other side, we have our moments of mental agony, mental or physical passion, when we go through in our life what Jesus went through: betrayal, denial, loneliness, rejection, false accusation, insults, shameful humiliation, unbearable suffering, and sometimes even crucifixion. Luke's passion narrative tells us in clear terms that Jesus continues to extend his arms of mercy, concern, and grace towards us at these agonizing moments of our lives. Do we believe in this? Do we? That is why scholars say that Luke's account of Christ's passion is an account of his compassion and great concern shown towards the downtrodden and marginalized people such as women, sinners, Gentiles, and enemies, even in the midst of his own unthinkable suffering. Luke insists that Jesus continued his ministry of mercy towards this sort of people, even at the cost of his own personal suffering. Today, we who proclaim Christ as our King, with the palm branches in our hands, are challenged whether we are willing to live by his values of compassionate love, forgiveness, and reconciliation, even at the cost of personal inconvenience and suffering and sacrifices, and minister to the marginalized as he did. Let us take Jesus' ministry of compassion to the above mentioned people one by one. Number one, While praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, Luke portrays Jesus as the one who is mentally broken at the thought of such a horrible suffering, and his sweat becomes like great drops of blood, as Luke mentions in verse 44. Today, also, he becomes one with our brokenheartedness and a traumatic experience in life, such as mental torture inflicted sometimes even by our own dear ones in our family, intimidation by our enemies, mental pressure put on us by the authorities in workplaces and administration, tension of mental disharmony or incompatibility, the mental shock given sometimes by our rebellious and crime-prone children, etc., etc. Crime-prone children, mental agony given by them to their parents. Number two, when Peter denied Jesus for the third time, the compassionate gaze of the Lord as he turned and looked at him, as verse 61 says, brought about a change of heart in him. Like Peter, we deny Christ both by committing sins against love, justice, and fraternity, and by omitting to do the deeds of mercy done by him even during his passion. Today, can Jesus' penetrating grace at sinners like us melt the hardness of our hearts? Can it melt? Number three, unmindful of his own suffering, just as he showed concern and compassion for the women of Jerusalem today also Jesus appeals to us not to weep for him, but for ourselves and for our children, as verse 28 says, to weep for the times we allowed evil to rule over our lives and cooperated with it and did nothing to prevent its spread. Weep for the disoriented lives of our children, and weep for all the injustice, corruption, hate, campaign, child abuse, sexual abuses, etc. in our world today. We must weep also for the prevalent culture of violence and crime that is channelized through through sections of irresponsible mass media, poisoning the tender minds of children. Do we weep for these things quietly in our hearts? Do we? Number four, Jesus' moving prayer to the Father from the cross to forgive his crucifiers in verse 34, and his act of forgiveness for his enemies has motivated many disciples to do the same. In recent years in India, we have shining examples of two women, namely Mrs. Gladys Staines and Sister Selmy. The former publicly forgave her enemies who burned to death her missionary husband and two sons in the state of Odisha as she stood in front of 3 coffins, and the latter forgave the murderer of her elder sister, Sister Rani Maria, in the state of Madhya Pradesh. If these two women could bear such a powerful witness in the midst of such a great personal tragedy, why should we still hold on to smaller hurts caused by our family or community members, opponents, or critics? Number 5, the example of Jesus in granting the reward of paradise to the repentant criminal who with their simple faith acknowledged his crime and cried out to the Lord for mercy as he hanged on the cross. As verse 41 says, we sinners also must cry out today, what about me, Lord? Please remember me also when you come into your kingdom. As verse 42 says, may your mercy, Lord, melt my heart and lead me to repentance and conversion. Number 6, finally, as we reflect on the great emphasis laid by Luke on the innocence of Jesus, which we publicly declared, which was publicly declared by a Roman centurion or Gentile in chapter 23, verse 47, we can see the face of the crucified Lord in the face of so many innocent people who get brutally murdered, bombed, kidnapped, tortured, and shot dead while peacefully demonstrating for their rights in our world today. Let us examine our conscience and see let's examine our conscience and see whether we cause suffering to any innocent and powerless person, or whether we have unjustly condemned an innocent person in our life. A prayer. O crucified Lord, grant that we may live by your values of compassionate love, forgiveness and reconciliation, even at the cost of personal inconveniences and sacrifices, and minister to this marginalized and minister to the marginalized as you did. Amen.